Seoul was quiet that night. The rain fell softly against the glass towers. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold and blue. In the middle of that silence, two messages appeared on millions of screens, one from Jong Suk, one from IU. No one expected that what they said would make the city hold its breath. People assumed it would be a confession, a breakup, a scandal waiting to unfold. But instead, it was something far deeper, a revelation of pain, gratitude, and quiet truth. Jong Suk's post began with a single line that lingered in the air: "I wanted to speak when I finally understood what my silence meant." IU's followed just moments later: "I stayed quiet not to hide, but to protect." Within minutes, the headlines turned from shock to stillness. It was not gossip anymore, it was a story that felt human. For years, both of them had stood at the center of the storm, adored, analyzed, misunderstood. IU, the nation's voice, carried the burden of being flawless. Every word she spoke was measured, every gesture magnified. Jong Suk, known for his gentle charm and thoughtful eyes, often seemed calm. Yet those close to him whispered that he carried loneliness like a shadow. Fame had given them everything, and quietly taken just as much away. "I sometimes forget that I'm allowed to be human," IU once wrote. Her words, small and trembling, resurfaced after her latest statement. She spoke of the nights when music no longer healed, when even applause felt hollow. "I've spent years trying to smile for others, but one day I realized I didn't remember how to smile for myself." Jong Suk's letter was raw in a different way. He confessed that during the filming of a recent drama, he had lost focus. Not because of pressure, but because he had forgotten why he loved acting. "I kept pretending I was okay," he wrote, "until I couldn't remember what real felt like." His unexpected statement was not an apology for a mistake, but a thank you to those who stayed when he couldn't even look at himself in the mirror. As the world speculated about their words, something extraordinary happened. Stopped gossiping and started listening. Fans reread their posts not for clues, but for emotion. "Not a scandal," one fan tweeted. "It's a cry for peace." Behind those simple messages lay years of unspoken struggle. IU had once admitted in a quiet radio interview that she feared losing herself amid fame. When everyone loves you for what they see, you begin to wonder if they'd still love you for what's unseen. Jong Suk, too, spoken about the emptiness between projects. How he avoided mirrors and interviews during his most anxious days. "Silence," he wrote, "became my only way to survive." The truth behind their unexpected statements was not an announcement but a release, a moment when two people who had carried the weight of perfection decided to set it down. They had chosen honesty over image, sincerity over spectacle. Seoul, that city that thrives on noise and rumors, found itself unusually quiet. Outside the studios, the neon signs still flickered, but inside, people watched their videos in silence. IU's eyes glistened as she said softly, "There were times I wanted to disappear, but I stayed because of the people who believed in me." Jong Suk, in his slow, full tone, added, "I'm learning to forgive the version of myself that thought he had to be perfect." In the hours that followed, their words became something sacred. Online forums turned into spaces of comfort. Fans shared stories of their own battles with loneliness, using the hashtag #Wunderstand. The usual noise of judgment was replaced by empathy. It felt like, for once, everyone remembered that celebrities are not characters, they are human beings breathing under the same sky. Behind every performance, behind every smile, there had been exhaustion. IU spoke of the nights she would return home after a concert and sit in silence, unable to sleep. "The crowd was so loud," she wrote. "The moment I closed the door, it was just me and my heartbeat." Jong Suk described his struggle to act while feeling empty inside. The fear of disappointing fans who saw him as unshakable. "There were days," he confessed, "when even pretending became too heavy." It was not a coincidence that both statements came on the same evening, though neither mentioned the other directly. Timing spoke volumes. Both used the same words: faith, healing, truth. Fans could feel the connection, two souls walking parallel paths, finally finding courage to speak at the same time. Sincerity became breaking news. One journalist wrote, and perhaps it was true. A world obsessed with perfection. Vulnerability was the most shocking headline of all. Dawn broke over the Han River. The rain had stopped. The city lights dimmed. Flow of their words remained. IU's song played softly from a cafe, a melody about truth and forgiveness. Jong Suk's face appeared on a billboard nearby, smiling faintly. For the first time in a long while, that smile felt real. What began as two unexpected statements had turned into something much more profound, a reminder that even those who seem untouchable can ache, break, and heal. They didn't owe the world an explanation. Only wanted to share a piece of their truth. By nightfall, fans around the world had begun to echo their message. You don't have to be perfect to be loved, one comment read. Sometimes honesty is the most beautiful thing. It was silent again that night. But it wasn't the silence of indifference. It was the stillness of understanding. Their words hung in the air, like the last note of a song that refuses to fade. It wasn't a scandal. It was a confession of being human. The morning after their heartfelt confessions, Seoul seemed softer somehow. The rush of the city slowed, the usual noise of entertainment headlines gave way to something quieter, more contemplative. For once, Spotlight didn't chase drama, it illuminated truth. Both Jong Suk and IU appeared not as untouchable stars, but as people who had dared to be honest in a world that demands perfection. When IU stepped out for her first public appearance after the post, she wore no heavy makeup, no dazzling dress, just a pale sweater and the calm look of someone finally free. Cameras flashed, but she didn't hide. She bowed deeply, her voice trembling slightly as she said, "I didn't mean to make headlines. Just wanted to speak from the heart." Reporters expected rehearsed answers. Yet her sincerity made even the most skeptical journalists fall silent. Jong Suk appeared the next day at a fan event. His voice was steadier than usual, his eyes reflecting warmth rather than exhaustion. "Thank you," he said softly. "Not misunderstanding me. For listening instead of judging." He smiled, almost shyly, as the crowd cheered, not for his looks or fame, but for the courage he took to be real. An industry where vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness, their honesty became revolutionary. It wasn't a performance. And that's why it mattered. Both of them had lived through moments when truth was dangerous, when revealing pain meant risking reputation. Yet that night, they chose to speak, and in doing so, they transformed silence into healing. IU later shared in a radio interview that she had hesitated before posting her message. "I was afraid," she said. "Afraid that people would think I was weak. But then I realized, maybe showing weakness is also a kind of strength." Her voice cracked midway, and the host didn't interrupt. The nation listened in stillness. Jong Suk, in an editorial interview that followed, with a calm wisdom, "I learned that truth is not meant to be dramatic. It's meant to be freeing." He recalled his early years, when every expression was analyzed, rumor magnified. "Back then, I thought silence was protection. But I see now, sometimes silence is just fear wearing a mask." Their stories mirrored each other, two lives shaped by fame, bruised by expectations, yet healed by honesty. Some called it coincidence. Others called it fate. Whatever it was, it connected them in a way the public couldn't ignore. Without ever saying each other's names, their words intertwined like verses of the same song. IU's confession about love struck a deep chord. "Someone who lives in the same spotlight isn't easy," she said gently. "You start worrying about their image more than your own. You use silence because you think it's safer, but love doesn't survive in silence. It survives in trust." And speculated endlessly. But her tone was calm, wise, stripped of all pretense. It wasn't a love declaration, it was a reflection, fragile and real. Jong Suk, when asked if he regretted anything, smiled faintly. "I regret not being braver sooner," he said. "I used to think honesty would break me. Now I see, it was what could have saved me." That one line spread across the internet, translated into countless languages, quoted in fan art and videos. The world, so used to chasing scandals, suddenly found itself cherishing sincerity. Hashtags that once carried gossip turned into messages of empathy. "You are not alone. Truth heals, Wunderstand." Fans wrote letters, asking for new albums or dramas, but simply saying thank you. One read, "You reminded me that I'm allowed to be tired too." Weeks later, IU performed at a small concert. The stage was intimate, bathed in amber light. She sang a new song, soft, raw, almost trembling. The lyrics spoke of nights too long and hearts too heavy, of rain that eventually turns into dawn. When she reached the final line, her voice broke slightly. Even silence can be love if someone's still listening. The audience didn't cheer, they cried. Somewhere among them, hidden behind a low cap, sat Jong Suk. Didn't need to be seen, his presence was enough. The crowd didn't notice. But a few fans later said they thought they saw him smile when IU bowed at the end. It wasn't spectacle, it was peace. Past, but the echoes of that night remained. Entertainment industry, notorious for its relentless pace, began to change in small ways. Younger artists spoke more openly about burnout and loneliness. Agencies encouraged rest instead of demanding perfection. Perhaps it was temporary, but even a brief moment of compassion felt monumental. In a later magazine feature titled "The Night Honesty Went Viral," a columnist wrote, "What Jong Suk and IU gave us wasn't drama. It was grace, indeed." The decision to reveal pain without shame became a quiet revolution. They had turned confession into courage, and vulnerability into art. When asked how she felt months after, IU smiled and said, "Lighter." Talked about baking bread, watching movies alone, writing letters to fans instead of statements. Realized healing isn't a grand thing. Sometimes it's just breathing without pretending. Jong Suk, on his part, was filming again, but with a renewed calm. Interview, he said, "I used to act to escape myself. Now, I act to understand myself." His words carried no sadness, only quiet acceptance. And so, the truth behind their unexpected statements became clear. It was never about gossip, confession, or surprise. It was about the courage to be real in a world that rewards illusion. It was about choosing empathy over explanation, action over control. As autumn returned to Seoul, the air crisp and golden, of them appeared on the same stage at an awards show. Not together, but under the same lights once more. "You sang," Jong Suk presented. When their eyes met briefly, the cameras caught a moment too brief to describe, a nod, a small smile, an understanding that words could never capture. The audience cheered, unaware that beneath the glittering lights stood two people who had learned to live without hiding. The applause echoed through the hall, soft yet thunderous in meaning. Outside, Seoul glittered again, alive with light. Somewhere between the noise and the silence, the story continued, not as a rumor, but as a reminder. A reminder that even the brightest stars can tremble. Truth can heal more deeply than perfection ever could. And that sometimes, the most unexpected statements are the ones that simply say, "I'm human too."